and sisters, this is a very important moment, not only in the history of this state, but in the history of our country, because this is the moment that working men and women stand in solidarity for the basic economic rights that we have a right to expect in a democratic society.
Today, brothers and sisters, we stand for freedom, we stand for liberty, and we stand in solidarity with Wisconsin's public workers.
It's time for us to stand up and say no to so many attacks on us right now. We've got to say no to budget cuts that punish the most vulnerable. What are we going to say? No! What are we going to say to foreclosures that are going out the roof? No! What are we going to say to stifling the voices of working people? No! What are we going to say when they try to eviscerate our collective bargaining rights like they're trying to do to ferry workers? What are we going to say when they try to contract out our work? What are we going to say when they pit private sector workers against public sector workers? What are we going to say when they pit non-immigrant workers against immigrant workers? That's right, brothers and sisters. Look, you know and I know workers did not create this economic crisis. The crisis was caused by the rapacious greed of Wall Street bankers and insurance companies.
If Scott Walker succeeds in eliminating worker rights in Wisconsin, the birthplace of public servants' liberty, it could happen here. Are we going to let that happen? No! Are we going to let that happen here? No! Brothers and sisters, not only could it happen here, but it is already happening here. Just not to the degree we're seeing in Wisconsin. It is only through the sheer dedication of all of you here today and our courageous legislators that have prevented us from becoming a state like Scott Walker's Wisconsin. Washington's public servants have negotiated contracts and are still negotiating contracts that grapple with tough economic times. Just last week, the Federation members in general government approved a contract by 86%. That contract had sacrifices in it, painful sacrifices, but that contract was negotiated in good faith using collective bargaining, and it was agreed to between the state and the union. And that's a lesson Scott Walker in Wisconsin might learn.
At this moment, while those in Wisconsin who have been sleeping in that rotunda for at least a week now, where workers will gather in Ohio tomorrow, and I'll be there in Columbus with them to talk about the path that we must chart. Just remember what it means for you here in Washington, that at this moment, when workers all around America are asking if there's going to be anybody who's going to stand in solidarity, that you are the vanguard of solidarity, that you represent the best hope of workers, that you are part of a wave that is growing, a powerful human wave that's growing and pushing, and it's the wave for economic justice. It's the wave for jobs. It's the wave for workers' rights. And finally, workers' rights are human rights. 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 Solidarity forever.